Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette. Salutations and welcome to episode 106 of Movie Oubliette, the globe-spanning podcast for forgotten fantastical films with me, Conrad, looking forward to getting some post-iconicon sleep in Cambridge, UK.
Yes, and me, Dan, finally able to breathe again, luckily, after the panel that I was in for Iconicon in Melbourne, Australia.
We focus on sci-fi, horror and fantasy films because we love steampunk societies dressed like Wallace and Gromit, treasure maps covered in baby spit, and giant mutant moles with fleshy nose tendrils. Hello, Dan.
Yes, of course we do. Hello, Conrad.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm able to breathe again because I have no more panels. I was only in the one 90s soundtrack panel. So yeah, I'm happy and free. But you do have
relaxed.
You've got two more panels to go.
Yes, and they're the biggies.
As of recording, by the time this comes out, you would have already done them, but yes.
Yes, unless something disastrous happens. No, at the moment I'm on the cusp of recording, going live with the team that did the Star Trek remaster, which I'm very excited about. I'm really interested in talking about that. And then, tomorrow, Bernard Rose and Tony Todd.
Yes.
Whew. But I'm sure it went well. Your time travelers, listeners, you've heard it already and seen it already. So maybe it all went fine. I hope so. But I know that I'll be there with Melinda and Serge. So I'm not alone. The Three Musketeers. So, but at the moment, I'm just fiendishly preparing and worrying about every detail. But I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you showed me the opening sequence that you made for Candyman, and wow, it's very cinematic.
It is, yes. I'm hoping to impress Tony and Bernard because I did one for The Last Starfighter, and Kathy and Lance really appreciated it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so
these little touches. I don't know if it would make up for me making a complete arse out of myself and asking stupid questions, but we'll see.
Yeah. So we've both been pretty busy with Iconicon. Anything in the mailbag amongst all that flurry?
There has been, thank goodness. Thank everybody for still keeping in touch with us, despite our lack of response sometimes over the last week. Jimmy Salt on Johnny Mnemonic said, "You guys have to watch Demolition Man. It's one of my top 5 silly action movies. So many great one-liners. I even own it on Laserdisc." Remember those?
Oh, wow.
I, too, still use an MP3 player since much of my collection is also not available on streaming. So a kindred spirit there with the iPod Classic.
Yes. I mean, when I was researching the 90s soundtracks for that panel that I was in, a lot of soundtracks are not available. And these are not scores, these are soundtracks. They're not available on streaming at all. Just can't find them.
No.
So I can understand the iPod usage from people.
Yes, so can I. I mean, it's especially those soundtracks, because a lot of really intricate licensing went on to get all of those artists onto one piece of plastic for CD back in the day.
Yeah.
And the streamers can't do it. Sometimes you can make the playlist yourself by searching out the individual tracks. But what a pain in the backside that is.
Often, though, in these movies, these songs were specifically made for that soundtrack only.
Right.
So they don't exist anywhere else. They're not on albums or anything else. They are on that soundtrack. That's it. So yeah, I had to listen to the Ninja Turtles movie soundtrack on YouTube.
Yeah, that's the one place you can get it. YouTube without content matching
Yeah.
is your best bet for some of these things.
Not
It's
great
bad,
audio
isn't it?
though, quality wise. But it was my only option.
Turtle turtle. Yes. Oh my. Ryan got in touch about Johnny Mnemonic as well. He said, when I met Henry Rollins,
Oh,
a little bit of a name drop there, Ryan, but very impressive. I asked him about this film, and he immediately went to Dolph. Henry talked about how needlessly grumpy Dolph was, and that he was a total prick to everybody on set, and made every day
Wow.
of shooting a total nightmare. Weirdly, Rollins did mention that every so often you could disarm him for a moment by engaging in discussion about science, since Dolph has a background in it, and that people really underestimate that the guy is a high IQ genius. So there you go.
I did not know that. Unfortunate about his behavior around
Yeah.
people, but interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I love getting these stories about what stars are really like, because they so carefully craft their public persona, and then you find out, like Ellen DeGeneres, I think is widely thought now to be a bit of a monster, isn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
Disappointing, because on screen, always so lovely, but then apparently as soon as somebody yells cut, monster. It's disappointing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're people.
They're people. Sometimes they have bad days.
Yeah.
I like Tom Hanks. Apparently, Tom Hanks is lovely all the time. But on his Twitter feed, he has something. His bio says, I acted in some movies you like. If you see me in the wild, leave me alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, fair enough.
Yeah. Exactly.
When we were asking people about their favourite forgotten 90s gem, Louis Saavedra said, Strange Days with Ralph Fiennes. Those mini discs looked really futuristic at first. Also, killer soundtrack.
Yes. I always found Strange Days to be quite disturbing. It's quite a disturbing movie.
I don't remember it very well. I think it's in the Oubliette. I think we might need to fish it out at some point.
Yeah. It's a Catherine Bigelow movie, right?
It is, yeah, before she hit the big time in the Oscars. So, interesting one to revisit. Eddie Coulter said, it's Frankenstein Unbound for me, directed by Roger Corman, starring John Hurt, Raul Julia, Bridget Fonda, Jason Patrick, and Michael Hutchence. That's a lineup. Based on the novel of the same name by Brian Aldiss, it's an unusual take on the Frankenstein novel.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you a while back that I wanted to cover it, but it's really hard to find, I think.
It's very hard, yeah.
I think it's only available on VHS or something.
I could not find it on anything other than a VHS on eBay, and I thought, well, we can't do that because guys listening can't watch it, so
Yeah.
it's pointless.
Only those that own it on VHS.
Yeah.
Very niche audience.
Very, very niche audience. That's no good. Nick Hardy also got in touch about a forgotten 90s gem. He said, for me, it's Trespass, a great thriller with Bill Paxton and William Sadler as firemen searching for hidden treasure in an abandoned factory. It also stars Ice-T and Ice Cube. Well, it was made in the early 90s.
Both of the ices.
Both of the ices. They just needed vanilla and they'd be there, wouldn't they? The hat trick. And was directed by the great Walter Hill. So I have heard great things about that, and I've never seen it.
I've never heard of it. So interested.
Now I've heard about it as being a great. I think when Bill Paxton passed, it was named as one of his great performances. So
Okay.
yeah. And finally, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Hello, Serge.
Hello, Serge. See you in a couple of days. He says on Dead Heat, there's a lot to love about Dead Heat. I'm surprised it isn't more popular, even though the plot is basically just a flimsy excuse to stage a bunch of zombie cop gags. There are some pretty good gags in there, and it even gets sort of introspective about death towards the end.
Yeah, exactly. It really was a surprise. Hidden gem.
It was a hidden gem. Yeah, I'd never even heard of it, which, because I read so much about the genre in the 80s, I would have thought I would have stumbled upon it by now, but no, Matt completely surprised us. So
Yeah.
it was a great time.
It was.
So that's everything from the mailbag. Thanks everyone for getting in touch. We love hearing from you.
Yes. More messages, please.
So Dan, I guess you ought to hop on over to that Oubliette and find out what's lurking in there for us today.
Oh, yes, I will. Ah! Oh, I'm in some sort of room with pipes.
Oh, of course.
Oh, what does that do? Ah, doesn't matter. It's not my job. Oh, it's a giant mole.
Oh no.
Okay, I'm out of here. Oh.
I like to go fast.
Oh wow, that was an adventure. What have you got?
Well, today it's going to be an adventure, a science fiction adventure, in fact, with City of Ember from 2008.
Wow.
It's directed by Gil Keenan, based on a book by Jeanne DuPrau, and screenplay by the very renowned Caroline Thompson.
Yes, who wrote Edward Scissorhands, isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it in this discussion, but a very admirable list of films that she's worked on. And this movie stars Saoirse Ronan, Harry Treadaway, Bill Murray, Tim Robbins, Toby Jones, Martin Landau, and a bunch of other people as well.
And what's it about?
Well, sometime in the near future, the Earth has become uninhabitable, and the last of humankind have to survive underground in a self-sustaining city, the City of Ember. But before they shut themselves in, the legendary builders lock in a box directions to resurface. However, over time, 200 years in fact, the box has fallen to the wayside and the civilization continues with somewhat newer ideals led by the slightly peculiar but questionable Mayor Cole. However, young Lena Mayfleet and Dune Harrow seek a way to escape the confines of the simple city, and with the help of the discovered direction box, they solve puzzles, uncover hidden doors, all the while avoiding the evil mayor trying to thwart their efforts. Will they succeed, or will ravenous giant moles devour them? We'll find out.
Okay, can't wait.
Yeah. And we are back to talk about 2008's City of Ember. When this came out, I'm pretty sure it was just called Ember in Australia.
Really?
It wasn't called City of Ember. It was just Ember.
Ah.
But I remember I almost saw it at the cinema. We had two options. We could either watch this movie or Twilight.
Oh.
And we saw Twilight, and immense regret.
Really?
I would rather have watched this movie to Twilight. Yeah, but we had a friend that used to work for the cinema at the time, and she got us like really cheap tickets.
Oh, okay.
But I would have paid more money to not watch Twilight.
Mopey vampires, not your thing, I take it.
That movie, yeah, not good. But I have watched this movie a few years later. Had you seen this movie before?
I had, but it just went straight into the memory hole. I had no memory of it whatsoever. It was a 2008 DVD rental.
Right.
And I thought nothing about it, and it's just vanished. Watching it again, it wasn't as though I was sat there thinking, oh yeah, I recognize this. It was just as though I'd never seen it before at all. I didn't remember any aspect of it.
Right.
But I have seen it. I know I have seen it. So it's really bizarre. I mean, the film did not do well. For some reason, the source novel, The City of Ember by Jeanne DuPrau, was subject to some huge bidding war, and Tom Hanks himself got involved and paid in the mid six figures in October 2004 to purchase the film rights to it. So they obviously thought it was going to amount to something. It had a budget of $55 million. It has since grossed 17.
Yikes.
Which is not good.
Yeah.
It was released on the 10th of October 2008, and it debuted at 11th place behind, and wait for this list, number 1, Beverly Hills Chihuahua,
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was a different time in 2008.
Wow.
And I'd like to point out Beverly Hills Chihuahua had racked up $145 million worldwide at that point. Does anyone remember what the hell this movie was?
Wow.
That's amazing. Quarantine, the US remake of Wreck.
Of Wreck, yes.
Yes. Body of Lies, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, Nights in Rodanthe, The Express, Appaloosa, The Duchess, and Fireproof. I cannot remember any of these movies, but they all did better than The City of Ember in the week of its release, and it just sank without a trace. So I can't say that it had stiff competition, but it still didn't do well.
Yeah, and I think they did have a sequel in the works as well, but then because of how poorly it did in the box office, just scrapped. Just immediate scrapping. Because the writer has, it's like 4 books: City of Ember, The People for Sparks, The Prophet of Yonwood, and The Diamond of Darkhold. They sound great.
Yeah.
I want to watch those movies. And it's interesting as well because I was thinking, did they combine some books to be in this movie? Because, I mean, spoilers here, they do get out of Ember.
Yeah.
You would think they'll spend more time in Ember in the books, but no, they don't. They do get out of Ember at the end of the first book.
Yeah.
And then they travel the world and they meet up with people on, like, you know, the surface of Earth. I thought they were the last of humankind. I didn't realize that they were just a bunch of weird people stuck underground.
Yeah,
You know?
no, I thought exactly the same. So that comes as a surprise. I know one of the novels is a prequel.
Right, yes.
But yeah, they did option the sequel, the full-on sequel. So, okay, they've gotten to the surface. Now what next?
Yeah.
But, yeah, went straight down the toilet, all the plans for that, as soon as this one bombed so badly.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
It is. I mean, the screenplay was done by Caroline Thompson, who was very, very notable. She did the screenplay for Edward Scissorhands, Addams Family, Homeward Bound, Secret Garden, Nightmare Before Christmas, Corpse Bride, and a recent film, Welcome to Marwen, which I actually quite enjoy. I don't know whether anyone else has seen that movie. No. Bunch of dolls. But yeah, she's done some really, really great movies in terms of screenplay. And I thought the story in this movie is a really good starting point, like the premise and the visual aesthetic of the movie and sort of the world, the science fiction futuristic world where they're just underground and wearing, like you said, woolly jumpers from Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah. Yeah. For a society that lives entirely underground and has no livestock, as far as I can tell, they seem to have an endless supply of wool, which is remarkable. Saoirse Ronan's character, Lena, her granny, that's her industry. There's wool everywhere in their house.
Yes.
I don't know where they get this from, but yeah. I mean, it's a complete world. It may not make a great deal of sense, but it is a complete world that they present on film, and the production is astonishing. I think they took over a whole, was it like a paint factory or something like that on a shipyard in Ireland?
Yeah, so the former paint hall in the shipyard of Harland and Wolff in Belfast's Titanic Quarter was converted into this huge set of Ember. Apparently it was so big that they gave out maps to all the actors.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like Alien, I think, because they created all of the corridors and the rooms on the Nostromo as a continuous set, so you could do all of those prowling shots. The cast would get lost in there and not be able to find their way out. And apparently the same was true of Ember. I think there were many a trail of wool with people sort of trying to find their way around, which, yeah, it's a remarkable production. I mean, it's sort of steampunky, sort of Wallace and Gromity. It's a very British production. There are a lot of British faces in here, including the 2 leads.
Yes.
But to me, the aesthetic is kind of Tim Burton, but Disney Tim Burton. So not early, interesting, dark Gothic Tim Burton, but sort of day-glow Disney Alice in Wonderland Tim Burton, if that makes sense.
It's very much a family movie. It's very wholesome. There's not a huge amount of stakes. I mean, there are we'll get into it in terms of how they're presented. For me, it felt like I was watching an animated movie, live action.
Right.
Like it felt like some of the stop motion stuff by Leica.
Okay.
So like the Box Trolls or Coraline. Like it had a very sort of quirky. I mean, the fact that everyone's in wool as well.
Yeah.
My wife mentioned when we were watching it, it's like lots of natural fibers.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of felt and tweed. But it did also remind me, like, in terms of the steampunk aspect of like Miyazaki films. So the animated films, Howl's Moving Castle, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and Laputa Castle in the Sky. So that aesthetic with the steampunk and the sort of natural fibers and underground, like it did feel very like an animated movie that you would normally expect it to be sort of animated. And because of some of the CGI not being hugely realistic, like had almost like an animated quality to it.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy because it not only fits the aesthetics that you're talking about, it also fits the depth of the character development, which is just puddle thin. I mean, it's my biggest problem with this movie is there is no character arc at all for anyone.
No.
If I were to sum up the plot of this movie, two people in an enclosed society that has lost its way, which we can talk about tropes later on,
Yes.
but they need to get out and they find the instructions, and the only obstacle really isn't any kind of personal growth. None of them have to overcome anything. None of them bring a particular skill to the table that then pays off later. They just read the instructions and follow them, and exactly the things that they expect happen, and then they get out. And the only unexpected element that could stop them is Bill Murray as the fat mayor, who tries to stop them, but they just run away, so that amounts to nothing. And a large mole that they escape in one chase scene and is never seen again except when it eats Bill Murray. So
Yeah.
and the characters do not grow. They learn nothing about themselves or each other. They don't even seem to have a relationship with each other particularly. So they are in exactly the same place at the end as when they began, except they've got fresh air.
Yeah, I was really surprised because there were a lot of setups that you would think would pay off, but
Yes.
they didn't. Like you've got the father who's an inventor, so you think, oh, he's going to help them. He's going to invent something. I mean, there was that one scene where they get into that weird digging bicycle trolley thing.
Yeah.
That I guess helps them, but
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be more to that character, like him overcoming his guilt for his friend dying or something happening, or the mayor just didn't seem to be that evil. He wasn't really that much of a threat to them.
No.
Like there were lots of things that were, I thought this would be a setup for this, then nothing.
Yeah, there's a moment where Lena's character, her defining characteristic, she wants to be a messenger because she loves to go fast. And I thought, oh, put a pin in that. She's going to do something fast later on that's going to save that. No,
Well, I mean,
never happens.
she runs away from the mayor, but there's not much competition there in terms of...
Well, no, it's Bill Murray in a fat suit. I mean, it's not going to cause a problem, is it really?
Yeah.
No. So that never pays off.
The
main
character of Dune. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be very, his mind with pipes and engineering. Nothing.
No.
Doesn't use it.
He starts out idealistically saying that he's going to fix the world, and he does.
Yep.
Good for him. I mean, in terms of classic storytelling, it's bad. And it's a short movie. It's only sort of 90 minutes. So I wonder if there's huge chunks of it that have landed on the cutting room floor in some desperate bid to try and speed things up.
Yeah.
I couldn't find anything that suggested that.
Yeah.
In terms of storytelling and character development, there is nothing to be found. Even Tim Robbins' character, the father, the inventor, Harrow Barrow or Barrow Harrow or
Yeah.
whatever his name is. Yeah, he starts out disillusioned and saying there's nothing to be done, but at the same time keeps instilling in his son this idea of keep your eyes open and look for things that other people don't see because that's where you'll find the most value or whatever. So he seems to be simultaneously inspiring and given up.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they discover that they did attempt to escape but failed. and then his son escapes using the same method without any kind of issue whatsoever. They just get on, start pedaling, and it just works.
Yeah. Yeah. And even when they get out, I thought, oh, are they going to go back and warn everyone? And because it's flooding right down in the city, everyone's just drowning, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
But they just throw a rock with a message.
Yeah.
Oh, simple solution. There you go. They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
They'll find the rock. Also, very talented actors underused.
Yes.
Tim Robbins, Bill Murray, Martin Landau. Not a lot to do.
No. Martin Landau is unrecognizable as a pipe worker.
Yeah.
His name is Sol, I think. His sole characteristic is that it's kind of a depiction of like a civil servant.
Sure. Yeah.
Because the whole point is that this is like communism. It's a group of people with a limited set of resources and dwindling knowledge of how this place works through the generations, just slowly trying to make do as the knowledge and the resources peter out. They seem to have assigned jobs. They reach a mature age and then they're assigned a job and then they do it no matter what their talents are. And they do it to the best of their ability, which in often cases is not great. And Sol is this guy who just keeps saying, it's not my job, it's not my job.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the civil service where it's a bunch of people who have no incentive to improve themselves or any system or process around them because there's no competition.
Yeah.
So it's like a brutal criticism of socialism.
Sure,
this movie.
sure.
And that's what this character is. Bill Murray's funny.
Yeah. He is. But he could be funnier. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
know.
I mean, I've seen him in a lot of movies where he is much funnier. Like, I don't know. I feel like he doesn't have much of a script to really add to.
No.
And he's not really on screen enough. I don't know. I thought he could have been quirkier or something. I don't know.
Or more evil. I mean, like you said, he isn't much of a threat. He's just a useless politician who has no idea what he's doing, and he's got a whole hoard of food that he's keeping just for himself.
Yes.
I mean, he's not hiding it very well. He's conspicuously fat, so he's clearly getting extra
Yeah.
food from somewhere.
Yeah.
And when everybody's annoyed about the fact that the power keeps going out in the City of Ember because the generator is failing, he launches a full-scale investigation. You know?
Yeah.
So it's brutal criticism of socialism and its resulting government of useless people.
I did want to ask about the generator, though. Why didn't they just fix it?
The sense that I get is just that as the years went by, nobody knew how any of it worked.
Right.
I mean, you have to question this whole system whereby people who have no inclination and no interest in a topic get assigned a task by picking the role for
Yeah.
themselves out of a hat.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I do question is why so many of these YA properties from the early aughts and onwards have an early scene where children are assigned their fate as a human being by
Yeah.
some random selection
Yeah.
process imposed on them by adults. So you've got the sorting hat in Harry Potter,
Yes.
the selection of tributes in the Hunger Games, this, and then I've never seen it, but that whole detergent, divergent, allegiant
yes.
thing. I've never watched it, but I think they're all assigned their entire life at birth, aren't they, or something?
Right. I
Anyway.
haven't seen it either.
It must be a preoccupation that rings true for young adults of that generation, that they feel as though, you know, they don't have many options in life and they're being assigned them by the previous generation and they don't make any sense, which I can understand.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like as well it has kind of just become a trope with those young adult, they're often dystopian futures as well.
Yeah.
Always set in some future where blah, 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 rules and this and that. So it kind of has become sort of a young adult novel trope. So Saoirse Ronan's in this movie. She was only 14, I think.
Wow.
13, 14.
Yeah, this is right after Atonement, which was her breakout role, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I didn't realize she was. I mean, The Lovely Bones came a year after this in 2009. I forgot she was in The Lovely Bones.
Yes.
Completely forgot. That movie is not great in terms of Peter Jackson films. Too much CGI. Way too much.
Yeah.
We've seen Saoirse on the pod in Byzantium. So she was in that film. And then now she's just like a behemoth of like stardom and Lady Bird and Little Woman. But yeah, 14-year-old Saoirse in this. I have to say, some scenes, not the best acting. I don't know.
No, and she was widely praised as well, I read, for her performance in this. I think she was even nominated for or won an award for her
Oh,
performance
okay.
in
I
it.
don't know.
And
That's questionable for me.
I think it is too, but a lot of it I'm wondering about the material that they were given and also the direction, because there are so many moments in this that are so badly staged, badly shot. So just for example, the death of her grandmother, which makes her and I think it's her sister, Poppy, the little kid that eats
Poppy,
the
yes,
instructions.
yes.
Yeah. Leaves them homeless, and so she has to move in with Mary Kay Place's character. That is so badly staged because you have one scene where Granny goes bonkers and pulls the filling out of the sofa for no apparent reason, although she claims she's searching for something important.
Yeah.
But it makes no sense. It's just bizarre without any kind of setup or connection. You don't know exactly why this is happening. The next scene you see her in, she's unwell and told that she needs to get bed rest. And then you have the next scene where there is another blackout. And when the lights come back on, you're on a master shot.
Sure.
Of the bedroom with Grandma in it on the bed, splayed out across it with her bare feet stuck towards the camera. Saoirse and Poppy are like miles in the background behind the bed, and they just say, Granny, Granny. And I'm sat there thinking, you go to the next scene, I'm thinking, what, is she dead or is she asleep? Or was there supposed to be an emotional moment there? Because there were no close-ups and I don't know what happened.
Yeah, right.
There was no sense that it was shot selection, reaction. There was no storytelling. I didn't know what happened. And that happened so often in the movie.
Yeah.
It was so poorly shot and directed that I'm sorry, Gil Keenan, but I could not tell what happened. Like there was a scene where, they put together the key to open some door and Harry Treadaway's character, Dune, can't get it to work. And then Poppy steps forward and she does something, but there is no close-up of it. And the door opens. And I'm thinking, what did she do? What did Poppy bring to the table that Dune lacked? Because it could have been a great moment for her.
My understanding of that scene was she pulled the key out, and that was what made the door open.
Oh, I completely missed that.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's a close-up of her doing it. It's like when Dune finds that enormous moth, and he says, oh, your wing is damaged, although I didn't see it. And then the next time you see it, it's flying. Did he fix it? I think he fixed it, but I didn't see it.
Right.
And I didn't fall asleep. I did not have like a blackout moment. I wasn't drunk. There was no shot of him fix. I think he fixed it with a shoelace because you see him take a shoelace out of his boot, but I have no idea because you never see it again. I don't know what that scene was for. So many times in my notes, I've just written, show us what the hell is happening because I cannot tell.
Yeah. So Gil Keenan, the director, he does a lot of family movies. So he started off with Monster House in 2006.
Which I loved, and I thought this is a really good, quirky, animated movie that's genuinely quite frightening and has some great ideas in it. And I thought, this guy is great.
Right. I haven't seen it.
It's really wonderful.
But then, after that, he does the remake of Poltergeist.
Yeah, I can see why he got that job.
Which I have seen.
It's crap, isn't it?
It's the worst remake of a horror movie I've ever seen. It's
appallingly
really bad. Really bad. I mean, it's got Sam Rockwell in it as well, which is just such a waste of talent.
Wonderful actor.
But yeah, it is just horrendous. It's not a good movie. But then Gil Keenan has gone on to do A Boy Called Christmas. I don't know if that's a good movie or not. And
that's really good. Yeah, I saw that last Christmas.
Right.
It is really good, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, really sweet.
And he also was one of the co-writers of Ghostbusters Afterlife as well. So I guess family movies are his sort of bread and butter.
Yeah. Sort of spooky films that focus on kids.
Yeah.
Or with some fantastical element. That seems to be what people are sort of either he's personally interested in or he's been sort of typecast as. I can see why they gave him Poltergeist on the strength of Monster House.
Right,
but
yes.
Boy, did he flush it down the toilet. But you don't know, it might be the script. He didn't write the script, did he?
Don't think so.
No, David Lindsay Abaire, not a name I recognise. So yeah, I don't know. He seems to be quite up and down.
Right. Yeah.
Depending on the material he gets, maybe. Although it's shocking to think that Caroline Thompson would turn out a bad blueprint for the City of Ember when adapting it on the basis of all the other things that she's worked on.
Yeah.
So I'm just stunned how little this movie impacts and how little it makes sense in the way that it's executed as well.
Yeah. I mean, my only explanation is just to make it more family friendly.
Maybe.
Like simplify, dilute it. Just dilute the plot down. Very simple. The grandma death, make it not sad.
Yeah.
For kids. We don't want kids crying. We want kids to understand the story. So no character development, barely any stakes. Things happen. They turn out exactly how they're supposed to happen. The end. And that's just, I guess, my only explanation, because it was very, very family friendly and wholesome. But there was also like a lot of emphasis on the visual look. Like I did like the visual look and aesthetic. Like we have already sort of talked about it, but even some of the characters did really remind me of like Roald Dahl characters.
Yeah.
Quite face value, quirky, it is what it is kind of characters. Like there's not much depth. I'm not saying the Roald Dahl characters don't have depth, but they are often very, you know your character as soon as you sort of see them.
Yeah, they're archetypes, aren't they? They're sort of caricatures.
Yeah, exactly. And every scene just had a very distinct look as well. You've got the city buildings, which look like almost like matchboxes. And then you've got the pipe room and then the glass house. They all have a very distinct visual aesthetic. Like the set design was just amazing.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite have the lived in feel, though. Things did look quite crisp.
Yeah, and very bright and well, it's mostly earthy coloured, isn't it? The City of Ember.
Yeah.
It's very sepia toned generally. But yeah, it doesn't look as lived in and dilapidated and awful as I think you're supposed to feel it is. It's supposed to feel really run down. They've been down here for 200 years making do. Everything is breaking down, wearing out, running out. They're supposed to just be like this time capsule that pops out after 200 years and resurfaces when the Earth is able to support life again. But yeah, you didn't really get that from the visual storytelling. It sort of looked like a delightful place to live, despite the lack of sunlight, which would cause a massive vitamin something or other deficiency.
That's what I noticed as well. Like
I can't remember which vitamin it is, but you would be sorely lacking.
Yeah, people should have looked a lot more anemic, pale. Like when they did escape as well, when the sun rose, it should have been just blinding.
Oh, yeah.
They should have been just like on the floor screaming, like, make it stop.
No, they were staring straight at it, which is never a good idea. Certainly not if you've lived underground by the light of a 40-watt bulb for the last 200 years.
Yeah. I mean, where do they get these bulbs from? You know, these are normal filament bulbs, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, I guess they must have had 200 years worth of a light bulb stored somewhere.
40-watt bulbs. Where did they store those? A lot of it doesn't really make any sense to me. Like, why the huge animals?
Yeah,
it felt like it was a
know.
plot point, but it never seemed to surprise them particularly.
Yeah.
And it never went anywhere. Are we supposed to think that because the Earth has been left untended by mankind, that all of the biological life has just gone rampant and gotten large? But it was never made clear to me, and it wasn't clear to me whether it was a surprise. Like, yet another piece of stellar acting from Saoirse Ronan. Love Saoirse Ronan, but in this movie, they're in a tunnel and this massive mole with red tentacles on its face runs through chasing Looper, the character played by Mackenzie Crook, the British actor. And any reaction from Saoirse? None. It's like average Thursday for her. And yet I don't think it was supposed to be. I think it was a bit of a surprise.
Right.
You've lived in a very enclosed society for a very long time. Surely a mole the size of an elephant should cause some sort of eyebrow lift. But no, nothing. Saoirse's unmoved.
Yeah. I mean, it's CGI mole, though. So, like, she didn't have much to work with.
No.
It would have been like maybe a tennis ball on a stick or something.
Yeah.
I know. It's hard to imagine, especially if you're a child actor.
I mean, it just in terms of trying to bring life to your movie and have story beats and tension, I get what you're saying. I hadn't thought of it. You know, maybe this is squarely aimed at family-friendly And so they're just going for that certification that always makes me giggle, mild peril, which you see sometimes. So maybe that's what they were going for. So it's like, Saoirse, don't look too frightened because we don't want to scare the kids. So just, when the mole eats people, just sort of look bored.
Yeah. I tried to imagine myself, if I was a child watching this movie, I think I would have enjoyed it because it's very basic.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of, stakes. It's not scary. I mean, some of the mole scenes were a bit scary.
It's colourful.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it really is aimed at children. It is a kid's movie. And that's not to say that kids' movie can't have depth. I mean, they do. A lot of great kids' movies are amazing.
Yeah.
This movie did remind me a lot of Goonies. Sort of Goonies mixed with Dan Brown. A Dan Brown movie.
There's a combo.
Puzzles and clues and things to figure out, but for children.
Yeah, and they're just blindingly obvious,
Yeah.
and they don't really have to draw on anything that's unique to them in order to figure it out. They just read things. And it's like, Dune says, it must be this wheel over here, and starts turning a wheel. And I think, why that one? There are two more behind you, mate.
Yeah.
Why must it be that? Oh, it works. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
The puzzles didn't even seem to pose too much of a challenge, really. They just went with it.
Yeah.
It was like a lazy afternoon on a Sunday. There were kids playing, tried a few things, all worked.
Yeah.
Now it's time for random trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating piece of steampunky trivia did you find in a 200-year-old time capsule today?
Well, this movie is produced by Playtone. I don't know whether you know this, but this is a production company Tom Hanks and producer Gary Gertzman established. But it's the name Playtone is actually from the fictional record company that was in the film, the 1996 film, That Thing You Do, which was written and directed by Tom Hanks. Yeah. It was sort of a springboard for him to maybe I should do this as an actual record label. So for a while it was a record label, and it has produced some movie soundtracks. So it brought out the Sopranos soundtrack, Bring It On soundtrack, Band of Brothers soundtrack was under the Playtone record company label. But in terms of movies, it has co-produced Castaway, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, The Polar Express, Mamma Mia, Where the Wild Things Are, and most recently, the new Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie is co-produced by Playtone. But that last one I'm not too sure about because I can't seem to find any other sources apart from Wikipedia. But I was not aware about Tom Hanks's production company. That's amazing.
No, I didn't know it was something that he was actively doing and
Yeah.
had a label for it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and the fact that it came from that movie, That Thing You Do.
Yeah.
All right, and that's our trivia. So my biggest bugbear with this movie is too much reliance on CGI, and it's not great CGI. It's very sort of TV movie CGI for me. I mean, it is 2008, so it's still kind of...
Early days.
Yeah, early days. All the practical sets and stuff look great, and then it would pan up to the ceiling with the CGI bulbs. Ugh, Not good. Not good.
Yeah.
That scene with the CGI turbines and the water, that's not good.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah.
Like a low-budget TV movie. I mean, Netflix would do better now.
Yeah.
But it's 14 years ago, so I guess you have to cut it some slack. I didn't think the animals were too bad. I thought the creature animation was pretty good.
Yeah, the mole looked great. The moth was it was passable. It was passable.
Yeah.
But yeah, even the climax of the movie where they're going through the tunnels and on the boat in the water, just like appalling CGI. It's like,
Yeah,
wow,
it's really bad.
not good.
Yeah, I wasn't convinced by a single shot of that sequence, I'm afraid. And again, the actor's just not reacting at all, just sat obviously in a green screen room in a boat. I thought, you've got what is Poppy, like 4 or something?
Yeah.
She's in real danger here. Nobody's bothered. It all works out fine. Why on earth did they put the main exit for Ember next to the giant boat mashing cog machine anyway?
No idea.
I mean, this is not good planning.
All right. Music?
So the music is by Andrew Lockington. He's a Canadian film score composer. Just looking at his CV, he's got those Journey to the Center of the Earth, Journey to the Mysterious Island, Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters. There's nothing in there that's like a breakout. There's a lot of comedy.
Yeah.
And to me, there's a lot of ostinatos and agitated strings and this sense of great purpose as though something is happening all the time. And it's very pretty and it's very densely orchestrated and it's as bland as anything. It's store brand mayonnaise. It's just really dull. And quite a lot of it sounds like it's lifted wholesale from the Chronicles of Narnia, which is a really great score by Harry Gregson Williams. And the main theme of this movie sounds alarmingly similar to the Chronicles of Narnia, which had cooked up a storm in the box office 3 years prior. All very lovely, very competent, very busy, very fantastical, very wonderful and lovely, lots of sense of awe stuff, but did not make me care one jot.
Yeah, it wasn't memorable.
No.
I think I wrote down in my notes, it has strings and brass. What you want in a score. But yeah, nothing that I can really remember. I looked at the other movies that Andrew Lockington has done. He's done quite a few quite notable TV shows. So Sanctuary, Frontier, and American Gods, all sort of in the fantasy, sci-fi, some horror realm. I think his biggest movie would have to be San Andreas.
Yes.
Which is not a great movie. It's got The Rock in it, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's a disaster movie.
Yeah.
I quite like it because it has a British guy in it who turns out to be, well, he's terribly British, but he's quite heroic. And it makes a change.
Okay.
Usually in these things, the British guy's the cowardly asshole that leaves the kids to die.
Yes.
But he's, really nice teenage kid that helps rescue the Rock's daughter in that disaster movie and then has to be rescued himself by her. So it's nice and equal and fair. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure. I quite like San Andreas, but I couldn't comment on the music because it, again, completely passed me by. He won a BMI Film Music Award for Best Film Music for that.
Really?
Similarly for Percy Jackson and Journey to the Mysterious Island. So, he's won a lot of awards. He's a very competent and well-liked guy. I'm sure he's lovely.
Yeah.
I just did not find this interesting at all.
There was one movie that I completely forgot that he did score. It's a movie called Exchange. Spelt Exchange. It's a 2001 sci-fi movie. It's got a really, really interesting premise. Like the worst movie, not a great movie at all, like very B grade. I think it's got like Stephen Baldwin, one of the Baldwins in it. The premise is the fastest way to travel is to send your mind to a vessel. So you can upload your mind and just send it to a vessel in another country, and that vessel will just be another human that you can upload your mind into that human. Really interesting premise. Like that's the fastest way to travel in the future.
Yeah,
apparently.
That'd be great. So if you want to go on holiday in Australia, you just pop into somebody else's body for a week.
Yeah, and just like borrow their body and just be in another country. Yeah.
So it's like that. What's that thing where you borrow people's houses for a weekend?
Oh, like Airbnb.
Airbnb, yeah. So Airbnb, but for brains. That's great.
Coming to you live from the movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
Okay, it's the Mobley Awards. It's where we present our favourite illuminating parts of the film in a number of not-so-puzzling categories.
Best quote.
My favourite quote in The City of Ember comes from Clary, who I think is like a gardener working in a greenhouse. And at one point she says to Lena, "Don't dig too deep, Lena." I thought, yep, that's pretty much the theme of this movie.
Wow. My favorite quote is we've kind of alluded to it already, but it's when Dune is constantly asking the head of Pipeworks, Sal, about things and what they do, and he always responds, "Don't know. It's not my job." But in that sort of big climactic scene where the turbine is getting stuck and Sal is just like hammering at it, just not a lot of finesse in that hammering. And Dune asks, "How do you know what to do?" And then Sal replies, "It's my job." And I don't know. It was just a good payoff for me.
Yeah.
Best hair or costume?
It's got to be something knitted, Dan, isn't it? Surely.
Obvious choice is Lena's messenger uniform, the scarlet cape or cloak that she has to wear. It's got the big stitching up the front as well, and I think it's made out of felt or something. But it looks like a garment you would see on an animated movie because of all the textures.
Right.
I don't think it would be hugely practical if you're a messenger running, but looks great.
It looks great. No, it's like capes on superheroes. Never a good idea, which they point out in The Incredibles in a very funny scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do like that. I mean, for me, it's all the knitted wear. Lots of lovely. They could have done a whole line of knitted wear from City of Ember, I think. And I love Dune's sweater, which has these blue and grey stripes. But I note that it seems as though either he's particularly poor or they're just so limited on resources they couldn't knit the whole thing because it sort of stops mid-chest.
Right, yeah.
This sweater. He's got something else underneath it, thank goodness, so Harry Treadaway isn't showing us his navel.
So it's not like it's not like an 80s like jumper or anything.
Crop top, yeah, no.
Most naughty moment.
Initially, I'd written, young adult movie adaptations, Hunger Games, Divergent. We've talked about it. But that was like early 2010s.
Yeah.
Those movies came out. So I guess I would go with the sort of revival of the children's fantasy with Narnia and Gold Compass, Spiderwick Chronicles, all coming out 2005, 2007, 2008. But yeah, just like adventure movies being very, very popular in the early 2000s. This doesn't have the fantasy element, though, that those movies do. But it does have that sense of like, we're in a new world. Everything's different and quirky and colourful and different. So it has that.
Yeah, it does. Now, it's as you say, it's fascinating. This one is kind of like a crossover between that sort of fantasy, adventure, colourful thing that you got in the noughties and then the dystopian trend that followed afterwards in YA in the 10s. I mean, I noticed a very close similarity with WALL-E, which also came out in 2008.
Oh, right,
where mankind is sequestered elsewhere to avoid an ecological disaster but forgets how to get back and becomes stupid. It's also very similar to Logan's Run, actually, from 1976, where they live in a dome and keep killing themselves when they hit 30.
Right, yes, that's right. In the sky. They rise up into the sky, yes.
Yeah, but then they wander outside and find that the air's fine and growing old's not a problem and looking at sunrises is quite fun. So, yeah, I thought this really did predict the YA trend that came afterwards.
Right, yes.
Favorite scene?
Genuinely none.
Right. Wow.
Nothing stuck out to me at all. Possibly the sunrise, because I almost felt something.
Right. Okay.
But mostly I think it was relief, because I thought the film was ending. So I thought the mole attack was pretty good. At least there seemed to be some jeopardy and they seemed to care about it. And I thought the shot where the mole's little tendrils were coming out and touched Lena's hand and she screamed and ran, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I was actually invested in what was happening.
Yeah, there was tension. Favorite scene for me, I kind of liked the hidden door scene. Like, I know it was dumb.
Yeah.
And they didn't really figure much out. But I just like hidden doors, okay? I like them investigating a room and finding something that they didn't expect somewhere that they didn't expect, and it turning out to be a boat. I don't know.
Most cliche moment.
I've said it before when we've done children's adventure movies. I'll say it again. Giant water slide. Gotta have a giant water slide in there somewhere. Yeah, it's in the Goonies, it's in Explorers,
Right.
and you have variations in Willow and Temple of Doom as well. So yeah,
yes.
gotta have a giant water slide. Have no idea why, but it's gotta be in there.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. In terms of cliche for me, this is not really a sci-fi adventure fantasy cliche. It's just like a cliche in terms of like kids movies. The main character is always an orphan. It's just always the case. All the Disney movies are like that. Like, I guess it's just like a really easy base point to start off with a character. And it also means that they're always just going off on adventures because they don't have any parents. They just sneak out. There's no
There's no
attachment.
parental supervision.
Yeah, exactly. and they're more independent always because I guess they don't have parents. But yeah, orphans as main characters in these kind of kids' family movies all the time.
Yeah, it makes them sympathetic too.
Yes.
Best special effect.
We've already mentioned it. The mole. The mole was great. I really like the mole.
Yeah.
So it's a star-nosed mole, a native to eastern Canada and northeast USA. They are blind, so that sort of nasal tentacles that they have, otherwise known as Imer's organ, it's used like feelers, like whiskers on a cat or a dog, to sort of feel out what's ahead of them, I guess, and to find food.
Yeah. Yeah, I had exactly the same thing. I think the creature animation is really good. And considering it's 2008, the models themselves that they created, pretty convincing, I thought. I mean, the moth one is a little bit cartoony, but the mole's great.
Yeah.
Favorite sound effect.
So we haven't mentioned it, but they don't have batteries in this world. They have extension cords. So if they want a torch, or a helmet torch, they have to plug it in and just roll out a huge extension cord, which it's impractical, obviously, but I really did like it in terms of like, oh, this is a world where we do this. This is what we do. And in terms of the sound effect, every time they plugged it in, there was that very distinct bzz sound as soon as they plugged in. And I just really like that bzz sound.
Yes, I really liked that they were British plugs.
Oh, were they? Right. I didn't notice.
My favourite sound is the wobbly audio in the hand-cranked answer phone tape.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Which had a crucial bit of information hidden on it in plain sight, as it turned out. Mm-hmm. One thing I did think about that sound design, and I did think of you, I took a sample of both times that the audio appears on the film, and it is exactly the same wobbling that happens both times they play it, even though the wobbling is happening because they are hand cranking it.
Sure.
It wobbles in exactly the same places in the same ways both times they play it through. And I thought, you lazy sound designer, you should have done it twice. And they didn't. They were probably up against a deadline, had to get it done. They just used the same take twice. And I just thought, this is really disappointing. Dan wouldn't do that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't, but I mean, who is gonna check that though? I mean, Conrad, come on. This is...
I noticed it. I thought, surely I remember those wobbles. It wobbled in the same places.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Most funniest moment.
I have to confess, I did not laugh once. Not even at Bill Murray. Which is amazing, isn't it? I honestly never laughed during the movie. Now, that could be because, we're very busy right now. So, I was very focused while I was watching it because I had like 8 other things to do. But honestly, it never once made me laugh.
Right.
Not even unintentionally.
I mean, as obvious as it was, the soul line with him, "That's my job." I did laugh at that.
Okay.
The really dumb gag with the mayor falling over, like very obviously staged and smearing his face on his own portrait. Kind of chuckled a little bit at that.
Really? For me, it would have just been like a breathe through the nose, that kind of... I acknowledge that this was meant to be funny, kind of...
Yeah.
Exhale.
Right, yeah.
And that's our movies.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Robert Picardo, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's the final part of the pod. It's where we present our verdicts for this film. Should 2008's City of Ember be freed from the forgotten city to enjoy a sunrise once more and be loved by all? Or should it be attacked by a giant mole and be dropped deep down into the oubliette to be trapped for a further 200 years? Conrad, did you like this movie?
Yes, go with me first. I don't think there's any suspense what I thought of it, unfortunately, because there were so many things about it that disappointed me. And certainly, principally, the character development or lack thereof, any kind of story arc, any kind of stakes, surprises, development, anything to engage you emotionally, any sense that there were characters here or that they were invested in what they were doing. There was just none of that, and it's just slathered on with this bland orchestral score, this stunning, expensive, elaborate-looking production design and costume design that looks incredible and fully realized and expensive, and some great CGI on the creature effects. But it all adds up to nothing. It's 90 minutes, and now I understand why I just completely forgot it, because nothing happens. It's the story of two kids in an isolated society who find some IKEA instructions, and their only challenge is the fact that the sister ate part of them. That's it. That's your movie. They overcome this obstacle and they sit and watch a sunrise. The ember should be left to fizzle out. I'm sorry. It should stay down there for another 200 years. And I feel really sorry for the people that accidentally open the box and find it again, because it's just, despite an amazing lineup of talent, it adds up to very, very little. And I was very disappointed in it.
Right. Wow, that's very scathing.
Yes, sorry.
I didn't actually mind the movie. I mean, I will agree with everything you've just said, though. I think it doesn't work in all of those aspects. But if you put yourself in a child's shoes, I think it kind of works as a kid's movie. Like, it's very, there's no depth at all. No. Everything looks colorful and stuff happens and there's no story. There's some, what can go wrong in terms of like having Saoirse Ronan and Bill Murray and Tim Robbins and Martin Landau in a movie. They're just likable regardless of their characters. So I don't know. I think it's fine if you're a child, and if in terms of parents out there listening to this, go watch this movie with your kid. Like put it on under 10-year-olds. It works. It's fine. It's fine. As an adult, it's not great. It's not great at all. I don't know. For me, I'm kind of I'm torn, because I think like visually it works. Like if you had no sound and you're not following the story, it looks like a really good movie. And I did like the world building.
Apart from many of the scenes where it needs to convey something and it doesn't. Which is really terrible. I mean, see, I would take issue with that, because I agree with you. I hadn't thought of that. Look at it from a kid's perspective. And I love your analogy of this is like a animated movie but live action. I love that. I hadn't thought of that. That's really interesting. But I still think kids deserve better.
I think kids
should have character arcs. They should feel something. I mean, even to this day, Chronicles of Narnia makes me well up in places, because it's emotionally powerful stuff.
I know.
And I think
yes.
kids deserve that. Not sort of stick them in front of this for 90 minutes. It won't bother them at all. They might fall asleep.
Yeah. Okay, well,
But-
I mean, maybe I'll amend that to under 5-year-olds should watch
Yeah.
this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess on that level, I guess I will have to put this movie back in the oubliette. Like I just can't get past how good it looks in terms of set design
It
and
does
costume
look good.
design and world building. But I guess source material is the reason for that. So props to the writer of City of Ember, Jeanne DuPrau. Some really, really solid source material. I think I would like to see this movie remade, maybe with more budget and more sort of some tinkering in terms of developing the characters a bit more. So I'm gonna have to say yes, I agree with you, Conrad. Just throw it back in.
Is this one of the first cases where I've convinced you, I've argued my case?
I mean, it's also one of those cases where it's just like, I don't know. Like it's good, it's bad,
Yeah.
it's not terrible. It
I
would be
really
fine
didn't
for
want to
kids.
toss a coin on this one.
Yeah.
I don't think it deserves that.
Back it goes.
I'm sorry. Let me just tie it to this rock.
It's not my job.
Down you go.
So, Conrad, what are we going to be doing next episode? Anything that should be dropped into a well?
So next time we're going back to horror. We're going back to the 80s, my home territory. And it's a British film, nonetheless. From 1982, it is The Sender.
I'm always surprised by the British films that we do, especially from the 80s and 90s, because they are very hit and miss.
They are. Yeah. So I'll be interested to see what you make of this one. This is one that I caught on late night TV at some point in the 80s or 90s as a teenager, maybe in the 90s, and it stuck with me. And it was
Okay.
really hard to get hold of, but it's now been released as a remastered edition, so it's widely available. So I thought,
Right.
let's see if it holds up to my teenage memories.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's directed by Roger Christian, who is best known as a production designer and won an Academy Award for Star Wars. And
Right.
he didn't direct many movies. It stars Catherine Harold and Jellicoe Ivanek. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And Paul Freeman, who was Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark the year before. So, yeah, that might be somebody you recognize. And it has music by Trevor Jones of The Labyrinth and The Last of the Mohicans, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
right.
should be interesting.
Yes, looking forward to it.
And if you're looking forward to our next episode, why don't you write and tell us about it? We're available on all social media as Movie Oubliette, and you can email us at movie.oubliette@gmail.com.
Yes, and please catch up on all of that Iconicon stuff, all those panels. I hope you watched them all, and I hope Conrad got through them all alive. We will see. But if you do want to be a supporter of us, you can become a patron at Patreon for $1 a month. You get access to extended segments, and you get to vote on our future movies that we will cover. And for $5, you get access to extended interviews and also our monthly mini-sode.
Yes, and I know as the cost of living is increasing at the moment, having spare cash around to support your favorite podcasts is no easy thing. So I have to say, I really do appreciate anybody who can support us on Patreon, because things aren't easy right now.
And also, we do have merchandise available, so you can support us that way by buying an assortment of household items with our logo all over it, or even the Iconicon T-shirt.
Yes, the exclusive one with us in two prominent characters from films we've covered. Nobody's guessed them yet?
Yes, I think someone has guessed me. Someone's guessed
Yes.
me.
Yes, they have. Yes, somebody figured out that you're from Buckaroo Banzai,
Yes. They haven't figured you
but
out.
the guess for me was wrong. No.
I mean, yeah, what you're wearing is quite. It's not exactly distinctive, I would say. Yeah, I don't know.
It's tricky. I think the most important thing about what my character is wearing is the fact that his trousers do not reach his shoes by quite some margin. Maybe that should give you a clue.
Yeah, maybe imagine Conrad not as a full-grown adult as well.
Yes. Yes. Maybe knocking around with Ethan Hawke.
Yeah,
as you
just
do.
a few clues there.
And a bit of a nerd. Yeah. Okay.
All right, listeners, thanks again for joining us for another episode, and we will see you in the next one.
We will. Bye for now.
Goodbye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie Oubliette.
On the day the world ended, the fate of mankind was carried in a small metal box.